By 3 o'clock on Thanksgiving afternoon, my kitchen smelled of cinnamon, butter, and the apples I had sliced before sunrise. The apartment was small enough that the oven warmed the living room, but I had always liked that. Heat moved easily through places that did not pretend to be larger than they were. I stood at the table wrapping Thomas's folding wooden ruler in one of his old handkerchiefs. The wood had darkened with age, and the brass hinges were worn smooth by his thumbs. Along one side, in letters he had carved himself, were the words, "Measure twice, build once." Thomas used to say that to Caleb whenever the three of us worked in the garage. Caleb would sit on the edge of the workbench, his sneakers swinging above the floor, passing me nails one at a time as if each one were precious. We built birdhouses, crooked shelves, and once a toy chest that would not close properly until Thomas quietly fixed the hinges after Caleb went to bed. Caleb never knew. We let him believe he had built it perfectly. I planned to give him the ruler that evening. On Monday, he was scheduled to take charge of the largest development project of his career. He had a title now, an office with glass walls, and people who waited for him to speak before they spoke. I was proud of him. I also missed the boy who used to come home with sawdust in his hair and ask whether buildings remembered the hands that made them. Perhaps the ruler could remind him. Thomas and I had worked opposite shifts for years, so one of us could always be home. He poured concrete before sunrise. I worked carpentry jobs, then trained younger workers in safety after my knees began objecting to ladders. When Caleb was accepted into college, the financial aid package left a gap larger than we could manage. I sold my blue pickup truck, the one Thomas and I had shared for 12 years, and took the bus for nearly a winter. I never told Caleb to make him feel indebted. Love becomes something ugly when parents turn sacrifice into an invoice. Still, remembering those years helped me understand why the distance between us hurt so much. We had not merely raised him, we had built our days around the possibility of his future. Near the end of Thomas's life, he saw that distance before I was willing to name it. Caleb had married Brooke by then. He had begun correcting my grammar in restaurants and suggesting I leave my union jacket at home when we attended Eli's school events. One evening, Thomas watched me excuse another canceled visit from our son. "You can leave the door open for him," he said, his voice weakened by illness but still unmistakably his. "Just don't lie down and become the mat he wipes his feet on." I told him Caleb was busy. Thomas only looked at me with the patience of a man who knew I was not ready to hear the truth. I did not fully understand his warning until Thanksgiving. I had almost declined the invitation. Brooke had once asked me not to wear my work jacket to Eli's school fundraiser because the photographs would be fairly formal. Caleb had canceled lunch with me twice that month for events with Brooke's family, and Trish, Brooke's mother, had a way of speaking to me that made every ordinary sentence sound like an instruction given to hired help. Then Eli called. "Grandma, I need to interview you for my project," he said. "You're the most interesting person in all 3 generations." I laughed, though my eyes filled before I could stop them. So, I packed Thomas's ruler into my purse. I covered my homemade apple pie with foil, placed an affordable bottle of red wine beside it, and put on my dark blue coat. The cuffs were old, but the coat was clean, brushed, and carefully pressed. Before leaving, I checked the pie crust twice, retied the ruler's cloth, and stood for a moment beside Thomas's photograph, asking him silently whether hope was courage or merely another form of denial. When my car turned into Caleb's neighborhood, the houses appeared larger with every block. At the end of his driveway stood a polished sign for the Harvest Bridge Foundation. Beneath its gold emblem were the words, "Gratitude begins at home." I did not know then that it would be the first lie I saw inside that house. Caleb opened the door before I could knock. He wore a blue shirt that fit too perfectly to have come from a store, the sleeves pressed flat, the collar sharp against his neck. For 1 second, when he saw me, his face softened. Then his eyes moved to the pie in my hands, and the softness disappeared. "Mom," he said, giving me a quick hug that felt performed. "Brooke already ordered dessert from the bakery." Eli said he missed Grandma's pie. "I know." Caleb took it from me. "I'll put it somewhere safe." He carried it past the kitchen and set it on the washing machine in the laundry room. The foil reflected the light, suddenly looking cheap among bottles of imported detergent and folded linen. It was a small thing. No one had insulted me. No one had raised a voice. Still, it felt like the first cut of the evening. Brooke appeared in a cream dress, beautiful and composed. She kissed my cheek and reached for my coat. "The front closet is completely full," she said. "I hope you don't mind." She took my dark blue coat through a narrow hallway and hung it in the mudroom beside the rear entrance. 2 black jackets belonging to the catering staff were already there, I noticed, but thanked her anyway. Sometimes dignity begins with choosing which humiliations deserve your energy. The living room looked arranged for a magazine. White candles burned on the mantel, champagne glasses stood in perfect rows near the fireplace. A photographer adjusted his camera while Trish directed everyone into position. She wore a silver dress and a smile I had seen in newspapers. Brooke stood beside her, Caleb beside Brooke, and Eli between his parents. When I moved toward them, Trish lifted one hand. "Let's take the host family first," she said pleasantly. "Then we can do a wider photograph." I stepped back before anyone had to ask twice. Eli looked at me, then at the empty space beside him. Without warning, he left the arrangement and crossed the room to stand beside me. "If Grandma isn't in it," he said, "then it isn't the whole family." The photographer lowered his camera. Caleb looked embarrassed. Brooke whispered Eli's name. Trish's smile remained fixed, but something hard entered her eyes. I rested my hand on Eli's shoulder. For a moment, the room felt warm again. While everyone rearranged themselves, I noticed framed photographs on the wall. In one, Trish handed grocery boxes to families outside a food bank. In another, she shook hands with the mayor beneath a Harvest Bridge Foundation banner. A third showed her receiving an award engraved with the words, "Community Compassion." "You've done impressive work," I told her. Trish glanced toward the photographs as if they were mirrors. "Not everyone knows how to escape poverty," she said. "Sometimes people need someone else to decide what is best for them." Her voice remained gentle. That made the sentence worse. She did not speak of struggling families as neighbors. She spoke of them as unfinished projects. Before I could answer, Eli ran toward me carrying Brooke's tablet. "Grandma, can we start my interview?" The screen showed a paused image of Brooke delivering a Thanksgiving message for her mother's foundation. She had apparently finished a live stream minutes earlier. Eli explained that his school project, 3 generations, required him to interview relatives and record part of a family tradition. He also wanted to call his Aunt Claire in Seattle so she could participate. Brooke was distracted by the photographer and handed him the tablet without checking which applications remained open. Claire's face soon appeared on the screen. Her hair was tied back, and behind her I saw rain against a Seattle window. "Hi, Nora," she said warmly. "Eli says you're the star of this project." Trish did not return the warmth. "I thought you were working today," she said. "I left that job 3 years ago, Mom." "Yes," Trish replied. "We all remember." Claire had once worked for the family business before moving west. Whatever wound existed between them had never healed. As Eli adjusted the tablet, I went to place the wine near the dining room. From the hallway, I heard Trish speaking quietly to Caleb. "Don't forget Monday's board meeting," she said. "I used considerable influence to keep that position for you." "I know," Caleb answered. "There won't be any problems tonight." Neither said my name. They did not need to. Minutes later, Eli placed the tablet on a bookshelf facing the dining table. Claire's image remained in a small window on the screen. In one corner, a tiny light continued glowing. No one noticed. Dinner was announced with the soft chime of a spoon against crystal, and everyone moved toward the dining room as if following choreography. Place cards waited beside polished silverware. Mine sat near the far end of the table. 2 seats from the doorway, Trish noticed me looking. "We wanted the foundation people together," she explained. "It makes conversation easier," her tone was courteous. But the arrangement said what she did not. Brooke's colleagues, donors, and board members occupied the center. I had been placed where I could be included without being seen. Before I sat, Eli picked up his card from beside Trish and carried it down to the empty place next to mine. "Eli," Brooke said, reaching for it. "Your seat is up here." Caleb leaned toward her. "Let him stay," he murmured. "Don't make this into something." He was not defending me. He was preventing a scene. Eli slid into the chair beside me, pleased with his small victory. I smiled and unfolded my napkin. The first courses arrived in careful order: soup, salad, then platters of turkey, stuffing, vegetables, and cranberry relish. Everything looked beautiful. Conversation flowed around me in circles I could not enter. Donor dinners, private schools, renovation permits, a winter retreat in Vermont. Whenever I answered a question, Trish redirected it towards someone with a title she considered useful. Once, a server reached across to me to refill another guest's glass while mine remained empty. I could not tell whether he had been instructed or had simply learned the hierarchy of the room. Either possibility left the same bitter taste. Yet when dessert was mentioned, I realized my pie had not appeared. "Brooke," I asked, "did the apple pie make it into the kitchen?" She glanced toward the staff. "I think they put it away." Trish lifted her wine glass. "Homemade things have their own charm," she said. "But we do have important guests tonight." I looked down at my plate. Arguing would only give her another stage. Eli did not share my restraint. "I only want Grandma's pie." A few guests smiled. Trish did not. To redirect the room, Eli pulled a worksheet from beneath his chair. His class project included a list of interview questions, and he had been waiting all afternoon to ask them. "What did you build, Grandma?" I told him about a public elementary school where I had installed doors and framing, a rehabilitation center designed for patients learning to walk again, and an affordable housing development that gave 60 families a permanent address. Later, I explained, I had trained new workers to recognize hazards before someone got hurt. Eli considered that carefully. "So you helped people have homes and helped workers get home safely." "That is a good way to put it." Trish set down her fork. "Your grandmother did not design those buildings," she said. "She worked at the construction sites." The correction was delivered gently, almost helpfully. I met her eyes. "That is true, and no building stands if it exists only on paper." For the first time that evening, I heard my own dignity return in my voice. A man seated across from me asked whether the blue coat he had seen earlier was an old Union jacket. Before I could answer, Trish smiled. Nora has always been very loyal to her past. She made loyalty sound like a failure to improve. My past raised my son, I said. I see no reason to be ashamed of it. The table quieted. Caleb's face tightened. When the servers began changing plates, he touched my elbow and guided me into the hallway. Mom, please do not challenge her tonight, he whispered. I have clients here. There are board members at that table. Did you hear what she said to me? Yes, I heard. Then why are you speaking to me? He exhaled and looked toward the dining room, checking whether anyone could see us. You know how she is. Can you let it go for one evening? There it was, the rule that had governed too many families for too long. The person causing pain was excused because everyone expected cruelty from her. The person receiving it was asked to become smaller because kindness was considered easier to control. In many families, peace is only the polite name people give to the silence of the weaker person. I returned to my chair without answering Caleb. Eli leaned close enough that only I could hear him. Grandma, why does Dad always tell you to be quiet when other people make you sad? I looked at my grandson and found no answer gentle enough for a child. Across the room, Claire was still connected through the tablet, watching us in silence. When I returned to the table, Trish had reclaimed the room. She was telling one of the board members about a leadership program Eli might enter the following year. He needs the right influences early, she said. Children absorb more than we realize. Her eyes shifted toward me. I simply do not think he should hear so many stories about manual labor. We are preparing him for private school, leadership programs, and a different future. Eli looked down at his worksheet. I folded my hands beside my plate. A child can learn how to lead without learning to look down on people who work with their hands. The conversation stopped. Trish gave me a patient smile, the kind people use when they want an insult to appear charitable. I only want my grandson to have more choices than the people who came before him. She did not say my name. She did not need to. For years, I had treated comments like that as the price of seeing Caleb and Eli. I had swallowed them because I believed endurance was the same as love. But something in Eli's earlier question had shifted inside me. I did not want him learning that dignity meant remaining quiet while someone reduced you. Trish, I said, keeping my voice level, you do not have to admire my life, but if you want me to sit at this table, you need to speak to me like a human being. The room went still. Brooke set down her glass. Mom, she said softly, maybe we should change the subject. It was the smallest challenge imaginable, but Trish turned toward her as though she had been betrayed. Brooke lowered her eyes. Then Trish laughed. Nora has always been sensitive about status. A voice came from the tablet nearby. No, Mom, the way you speak is the problem. Claire's face filled the screen. Trish stood and crossed toward the bookshelf. This conversation does not concern you. It concerns me when you treat people the way you treated us, Brooke whispered. Claire, please. The fear in her voice told me this argument had begun long before I entered the house. Brooke had survived her mother by becoming agreeable. Claire had survived by leaving. Trish reached for the tablet, but Eli hurried over and lifted it from the shelf. I need Aunt Claire for my project. Put it down, Trish ordered. It is his assignment, I said. Trish's expression tightened. Each time someone resisted her, even gently, her control weakened. She was not accustomed to being challenged by a guest, a daughter, and a child in the same room. Eli returned to his chair with the tablet. As he sat, he pulled at his tie. Mom, it is too tight. Brooke glanced toward the photographer, who was preparing another picture. Leave it alone, honey. We will take a photograph after dinner. Eli tugged again. I cannot breathe right. Sit still. Then he coughed. It began as a small sound, but the second cough was real. I stood and went to him. "Let me see." I loosened the knot and slipped one finger between the collar and his neck. His breathing settled. "There," I said. Looking good is not more important than being able to breathe. For a moment, no one spoke. The sentence seemed to belong to more than the tie. As I turned back toward my chair, Trish gathered several used plates into a stack and held them out to me. "Howie, since you are already standing, take these to the kitchen. The servers are busy." I looked at the plates, but did not take them. Trish extended them farther. "Nora, I asked you to carry these into the kitchen." Her voice was louder now. Every guest could hear. "I am not ashamed of work," I said. "I have worked all my life, but tonight I am a guest in my son's home. I am not someone you can use to display your status." Caleb came to my side. "Mom," he whispered, "just put the plates in the kitchen. Do not turn this into a problem." I looked at him. Why am I always the person expected to give in? His mouth opened, but no answer came. That silence answered enough. I picked up my purse and walked to Eli. His face had gone pale. "I am going home. I will call you tomorrow." "Grandma, did I do something wrong?" "No." I touched his cheek. "None of this belongs to you." I moved toward the hallway, leaving hurt. But staying would have taught Eli that love required humiliation. "Behind me," Trish said. "You are unbelievably ungrateful. Without my family, your son would still be nothing more than a laborer's child." I stopped and turned. "No, without my family, you would not have the son-in-law you enjoy controlling." The last trace of civility vanished from her face. Trish stepped toward me. Trish closed the distance between us before anyone moved. Her hand came up so quickly that I saw only the flash of her silver bracelet. The slap cracked across the room, sharp and flat, louder than the music playing near the fireplace. My glasses shifted sideways. Something hard struck against my ribs inside my coat pocket, the folded wooden ruler Thomas had carried for most of his life. Across the table, Eli dropped his fork. The small sound of metal hitting china came after the slap, but somehow it was the one I remembered most. It was the sound of a child realizing that the adults around him were not who he believed they were. No one spoke. The room seemed to tilt, not from the force of her hand, but from the collapse of every excuse I had made for that family. I had spent years calling their cruelty awkwardness, their contempt discomfort, and Caleb's silence and patience. In that instant, those kinder names became impossible to use. Caleb stood 3 feet away. Brooke had one hand over her mouth. The guests remained frozen in their chairs. On the bookshelf, the tablet still faced the table, Claire's face visible in the corner of the screen. I took one step back from Trish. "Do not touch me again." My voice did not sound angry. It sounded tired, and that steadiness seemed to unsettle her more than shouting would have. From the tablet, Claire's voice broke through the silence. "Nora, are you safe? Has anyone called the police?" I looked at Caleb. There are moments when a life narrows into a single choice. Everything that came before still matters, but everything that follows depends on what a person does next. Caleb had one chance to step between his mother and the woman who had struck her. One chance to ask whether I was hurt. One chance to become the son I had spent 37 years believing I had raised. He looked first at the guests, then at Trish. Then at Brooke, whose face had gone pale. His eyes flicked toward the tablet before finally settling on me. "Mom," he said, "please do not call the police. We can handle this inside the family." For a second, I thought I had misunderstood him. "You just watched her hit me." I know, he lowered his voice, as though volume were the real danger. But everyone is upset. If police cars come here, this will destroy everything. What is everything, Caleb? He glanced toward the dining room. My position is being reviewed on Monday. Brooke's company works with people in this room. Trish is the face of the foundation. Some of my clients are sitting at that table. If this becomes a police matter, it will not stay private. He named his job. He named Brooke's reputation. He named Trish's foundation and the comfort of the guests. He did not name my safety. He did not ask whether my face hurt. He did not ask whether I was afraid. Brooke stepped closer. Nora, no one is saying what happened was acceptable. We just need a moment to calm down. Trish stood behind her, breathing heavily, but already gathering herself into the posture of an injured hostess. Caleb reached for my arm. I moved away before he touched me. Mom, please listen. Say this was a misunderstanding. You can apologize for provoking her, and then we can deal with everything later, privately. The words entered me more slowly than the slap had. My son was not merely refusing to defend me. He was asking me to protect the woman who had assaulted me. He wanted me to bend the truth until it fit neatly around his house, his career, and his marriage. The pain in my cheek would fade. That knowledge would not. I adjusted my glasses and looked at the man who still had Thomas's eyes. I understand that you are afraid of losing your job, your house, and your marriage, I said. But to keep all of those things, tonight you chose to lose me. Caleb's face changed, but I did not wait for an answer. A chair scraped behind me. Eli came to my side and stood so close that his shoulder touched my arm. His eyes were wet, but his voice was clear. Dad, if Grandma hit Mom, would you make Mom apologize? Caleb stared at him. Eli, this is not, would you? Caleb could not answer. Eli looked from his father to Trish. Then why does Grandma have to apologize to the person who hit her? The question was simple enough for a child and too honest for every adult in the room. Trish's face hardened. You are being an extremely disrespectful child. Eli flinched. I stepped in front of him. No one will blame him for saying what the adults here were too frightened to say. Trish turned toward the bookshelf. Her eyes locked on the tablet. She moved quickly, reaching for the screen. Claire's voice came through before her hand touched it. Too late, Mom, she said. I recorded everything. Claire's words stopped Trish's hand inches from the tablet. For the first time that evening, Trish looked afraid. Delete it, she said. Claire's face remained steady on the screen. No. You have no right to record a private family conversation. I started recording when you began talking to Nora, the way you used to talk to Brooke and me, Claire replied. You always deny what you said later. I wanted proof before everyone decided Nora was the problem. Trish's expression sharpened. You will delete that file, or every bit of financial support you receive from this family ends tonight. Claire gave a tired laugh. I have supported myself for 3 years. That slap was a reaction, Trish said. She provoked me in my own daughter's house. You are not frightened because you did something wrong, Claire answered. You are frightened because someone might see it. Around us, the guests avoided one another's eyes. Some seemed shocked by the violence. Others appeared more troubled by the existence of evidence. No one defended Trish, yet no one moved toward me either. And that silence carried judgment too. Beside me, Eli stared at the tablet. I did not send it anywhere, he said quickly. I was only doing my project. I touched his shoulder. I know, sweetheart. He had not created a scandal. He had left the call running because he wanted Claire included in his family assignment. The recording existed because one adult had recognized the danger and refused to let another adult rewrite what happened. Brooke stepped into the center of the room, moving with the controlled urgency of someone trained to manage public disasters. "No one posts anything," she said. "No messages, no social media, no calls to anyone outside this house until we understand what we are dealing with." She looked toward the guests. This was an emotional misunderstanding. Nora was upset. Mom felt attacked, and everyone reacted badly. I stared at her. Brooke continued, already building a version of the night that would fit inside a press release. "We can say there was confusion. Both sides regret how things escalated. Tomorrow, we take a family photograph, show that everything has been resolved, and move forward privately." "You want me in a photograph?" "It would protect everyone." I understood then that Brooke did not see me as an injured person. She saw me as a communications problem. "I do not need any of you destroyed," I said. "But I will not lie so you can keep pretending this never happened." Brooke's face tightened. Caleb said my name, but I turned away. One of the guests, a quiet woman named Margaret, who served on the Foundation's advisory council, stepped forward. "I will drive, Nora," she said. Claire asked me to check my phone. A moment later, the recording arrived as a private file, along with a message telling me not to delete it. I went to the laundry room and found my coat hanging beside the catering jackets. My apple pie still rested on the washing machine, untouched. I took both. As I slipped on the coat, the wooden ruler pressed against my side. I placed my hand over it through the fabric. I had intended to give it to Caleb that night. I left it in my pocket. Eli followed me into the hallway. "I want to go with you." His voice broke on the last word. I knelt in front of him. "You do not have to choose between me and your parents. This is something the adults need to repair." "But Grandma, you did nothing wrong. I love you. I will call tomorrow." He wrapped his arms around my neck. Behind him, Caleb stood motionless, as if he had no idea how to cross the few feet between us. Margaret drove me to an urgent care clinic instead of home. A nurse examined my face, documented the redness, and took photographs for the medical record. The physician asked whether I wanted the police contacted. I said I had not decided. I was not protecting Trish. I simply wanted my next choice to belong to me, not to fear, anger, or pressure from either family. By the time Margaret brought me home, it was after midnight. Caleb called before I had removed my coat. I answered because one part of me still expected to hear, "Mom, are you all right?" Instead, he asked, "Who have you talked to about the video?" I ended the call without speaking. His first regret was not that I had been hurt. It was that the truth might escape his control. The next morning, an email arrived from an attorney representing the Harvest Bridge Foundation. There was no question about my health and no apology. Attached was a prepared statement describing the assault as a private family misunderstanding arising from heightened emotions. It said all parties accepted responsibility and considered the matter resolved. A blank line waited beneath my name. I stared at it for a long time. The dinner was over. The fight over who would own the truth had just begun. I did not sign the statement. Instead, I forwarded it to an attorney, along with the medical record and Claire's recording. Claire sent the file privately to the Harvest Bridge Board, its ethics officer, and my attorney. No one posted it publicly. For the first 24 hours, the matter remained contained among people with a responsibility to review it. By Friday afternoon, the board asked Trish to step away from public events while an independent inquiry began. Their message was careful and temporary, but Trish treated it as betrayal. That evening, she published a statement on the foundation's social media page. She did not name me. She wrote that her family was being targeted by an emotionally unstable relative, that an edited recording had removed essential context, and that she had devoted her life to protecting vulnerable people. She asked supporters not to judge a lifetime of service by one painful family moment. Until then, no one outside the board knew what had happened. Her statement changed that. Former volunteers began asking what recording she meant. People searched her name alongside Thanksgiving and assault. A woman who had worked at Harvest Bridge recognized the language Trish used to describe me. She posted that Trish often called aid recipients irresponsible, complained when they wore expensive-looking shoes, and demanded gratitude photographs before approving emergency assistance. Claire responded. She did not upload the full recording. She wrote that the video had not been edited, that she had witnessed the incident live, and that her mother needed to stop using charitable work as protection from accountability. She removed Eli's name and refused to share any image showing his face. Later, Claire provided a short blurred excerpt to a local reporter. It showed the slap, Caleb's request that I remain silent, and nothing more. That was enough. My name appeared in the article, and Renee Alvarez recognized it. Renee had been 24 when she joined one of my construction crews. Newly divorced and raising a toddler. A supervisor once tried to fire her after she missed work because her son was hospitalized. I had reminded him that reliable workers did not become disposable when life became difficult. Renee kept her position. She wrote about that publicly. She told people that I had organized free safety workshops on Saturdays, donated tools to apprentices who could not afford them, and helped young workers apply for union training. She ended with one sentence. The woman they called beneath them spent her life helping other people stand up. Others followed. A retired electrician remembered the winter. I brought groceries after his injury. A former apprentice posted a photograph of the first tool belt I had helped him buy. Families from the housing project spoke about the workers who treated their future homes with care. Their stories changed the conversation. The video was evidence of one night. Their memories showed the kind of lives each of us had been living for years. Harvest Bridge hired an outside firm. Old complaints about Trish's treatment of aid recipients were reopened. 2 donors paused their contributions until the review ended. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Trish resigned from the board. She described the decision as voluntary, but no one mistook it for victory. Brooke was not fired for failing to stop her mother. Her employer investigated something more concrete. She had used company email and asked members of its communications department to help manage a personal scandal. She was suspended and removed from consideration for a promotion. Before the inquiry concluded, she resigned. Caleb's consequences arrived more quietly. A client withdrew from his development project after learning that Caleb had pressured me to sign a false statement. His supervisors did not dismiss him, but they reassigned the project and began reviewing his judgment. The loss that seemed to affect him most had no official letter attached to it. Eli stopped asking his father for help with his school project. During their calls with me, he spoke to Caleb politely, but the unquestioning trust in his face was gone. A child had watched his father choose comfort over truth, and children cannot always return to innocence simply because adults regret being seen. People asked whether I felt satisfied. I did not. I do not want an organization serving poor families destroyed because its leader was a hypocrite, I told the reporter. I want it placed in the hands of people who understand that compassion does not require humiliation. Month after Thanksgiving, someone knocked on my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw Caleb standing alone. He carried no flowers and no expensive gift. In his hands was the statement he had once wanted me to sign. It had been torn in half. I remained behind the door. I was not ready to open it. For several days after Thanksgiving, Caleb called from different numbers when I stopped answering his own. The first message arrived before sunrise. "Mom, you have to help me fix this." He spoke about the client who might leave, the mortgage on the house, Brooke's position, and the damage to their marriage. He said the recording could destroy everything they had built. He never asked what the slap had destroyed in me. I listened once, then deleted the message without replying. Regret born from consequences is not the same as remorse. Caleb was frightened because his life had become uncomfortable, not because he had finally understood my pain. 2 weeks later, a letter appeared in my mailbox. His handwriting looked less confident than I remembered. "I know I was wrong," he wrote, "but you do not understand the pressure I was under." I read the sentence several times. The word, but stood between us like a locked door. I sent back a single line. An apology containing the word "but" is still asking the injured person to share responsibility with you. After that, Caleb stopped calling for a while. What happened next reached me through Claire, Eli, and eventually Caleb himself. He resigned from the position Trish had helped secure and moved into a small furnished apartment while he and Brooke separated. He began counseling, not because a company required it, but because he said he no longer trusted the reasons he gave himself for remaining silent. I submitted a written statement to the Harvest Bridge Board, confirming that I had not threatened or provoked Trish. He did not ask Claire to destroy the recording. He accepted that correcting the record might cost him clients, status, and whatever remained of his standing with the Whitmore family. Most importantly, he began telling Eli the truth. Brooke had blamed the boy for leaving the tablet connected. "If you had not recorded everything," she told him, "none of this would have happened." For once, Caleb did not lower his voice or wait until they were alone. "No," he said, "this happened because the adults did something wrong. Eli only made it impossible for us to keep lying about it." There was no audience, no reporter, and no board member in the room. That mattered to me. Character is not what a person performs when everyone is watching. It is the choice they make when telling the truth costs more than silence. 3 months after Thanksgiving, Caleb returned to my apartment. This time, I opened the door. He looked thinner. The tailored shirts were gone. He stood in the hallway wearing an ordinary sweater, holding nothing in his hands. "I let you be humiliated because I was afraid of losing my life," he said. "No one forced me to stay silent. I chose it. I am not here to ask you to forgive me. I am here to take responsibility." I studied his face. "If there had been no camera, would you ever have understood what you did?" He looked down. "I do not know," he said, "and that is what shames me most." It was the first answer he had given me that contained neither defense nor request. I did not embrace him. Love had not disappeared, but trust had changed shape, and I would not confuse the ache of missing him with proof that he had earned his way back. "I am not ready to forgive you," he nodded. "You can begin by becoming the father Eli needs. Your changes must last longer than the crisis that caused them. I will meet you once a month in a public place. Brooke and Trish will not come. You will not ask me to change my account of that night, withdraw the medical record, or protect anyone from the consequences of the truth. I understand. Understanding is the beginning," I said. "It is not the same as repair." When he stood to leave, his eyes moved toward the shelf beside my desk. The wooden ruler rested inside an open box, still wrapped in Thomas's handkerchief. Caleb stared at it. I watched recognition spread across his face. He understood that I had carried it to Thanksgiving, intending to give it to him. He did not ask for it. I offered no explanation. I closed the drawer. By early spring, 4 months had passed since Thanksgiving. The snow along the sidewalks had begun to retreat, and sunlight reached my kitchen earlier each morning. On Saturday, Eli came to spend the afternoon with me. Caleb arranged the visit and brought him to my building, then left without asking questions or trying to prove everything was normal again. Eli carried a backpack, a wooden toolbox, and Thomas's handwritten apple pie recipe. My kitchen was too small for 2 people to work without bumping elbows. Flour covered the table, apple peels curled across the cutting board, and cinnamon settled on Eli's sweatshirt. There were no centerpieces, no photographer, and no one arranging us to look like a perfect family. Eli pressed the crust into the pan. One side rose higher than the other, and the edge folded inward near his thumb. "It looks terrible," he said. "It looks handmade." "That means terrible," I laughed. Things made by hand do not have to be perfect to have value. He looked at the uneven crust, then at my scarred hands. "Grandpa Thomas said that?" "No, he would have measured the crust and tried to fix it." Eli smiled, but the smile faded as he began arranging the apples. "Grandma, did I ruin the family?" I put down the knife. "No, you turned on a light in a room the adults wanted to keep dark." He stared at the apples. "Mom still gets sad when people talk about the video." Your mother is allowed to feel sad, but her sadness does not make the truth your fault. What if I had turned off the tablet? Then what happened still would have happened. We might have been told later that it did not. I moved closer and rested a hand on his shoulder. But you are not responsible for rescuing adults. If you ever see something dangerous again, find a trusted adult and ask for help. You do not have to carry the whole truth alone. He nodded slowly. While the pie baked, I took Thomas's folding ruler from the drawer. Eli had brought pieces of pine for a small box he wanted to build for school. I placed the ruler in his hands. "Can I keep it?" he asked. "You may borrow it." He looked disappointed, so I explained. An heirloom does not belong only to the person who behaves best in one moment. It belongs to someone who understands the responsibility that comes with it. Could Dad have it someday? I looked through the oven window at the crooked pie crust turning gold. Maybe, when your father learns how to build without making someone else stand underneath him. Eli considered that answer without arguing. Children often understand conditional hope better than adults do. Near sunset, Caleb knocked. He remained in the hallway after Eli opened the door. He no longer entered my home as though his place in it were guaranteed. "Would you like a piece of pie?" I asked. He looked surprised. "If that is all right. It is pie, Caleb, not forgiveness." "I understand." He stepped inside and sat at my small kitchen table. Eli served 3 uneven slices. No one made a speech. Caleb did not apologize again or ask whether I had changed my mind. I did not reach across the table and take his hand. We simply ate. There were silences between us, but this time silence was not being used to protect cruelty. It was the quiet space in which a damaged relationship was learning how to breathe again. Eli looked from his father to me. "Grandma, what is a real family?" I looked at Caleb before answering. "A family is a place where you do not have to stay silent to be allowed to remain, and when someone causes harm, they do not ask the injured person to forget. They stay long enough to help rebuild what they broke." Caleb lowered his eyes, but he did not turn away. I once believed healing would arrive on the day pain disappeared, later. I learned that healing begins when pain no longer decides which doors I must open. If you were in my place, would you give Caleb another chance? Or are some betrayals too deep for an apology to repair? Share your thoughts below. If this story reminds you of someone learning to protect their dignity, send it to them. Please like the video and subscribe for more family stories about difficult choices, truth, and healing.